Man, I missed winning, especially when they do it more than once in a row and look good doing it. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken handle the Chicago Blackhawks 7-1, picking up their second straight win, just the third time this season they've done that, yet to win 3 in a row, and more than just winning a second game in a row, for the second game in a row, and honestly, I think this is the first time this season I can really say this, they played a pretty much full 60-minute game in back-to-back games. And that really was the main question, at least for me anyway, coming out of that game against the Panthers on Tuesday, that although the Kraken did play a fantastic 60 minutes in that game, really a great effort from all phases of the game, and that was depicted in the 4-0 score. Obviously, the end of the losing streak was great, and the shutout and all that. But we had seen the Kraken play the odd game here and there like that, just a fantastic 60-minute effort, looking like the team we expected at the beginning of the season. But then as quickly as they showed up, they disappeared in the next game. So then could they, in this game, put back-to-back games together where they looked like that team that we thought they would be? And happily, they did just that, putting together for, again, what I think is the first time this season, their second in a row, full 60-minute, 200-foot effort, handling the Blackhawks and really never letting this one get all that close. And yes, I know it's just the Blackhawks. They're definitely not the same quality of opponent as, say, the Panthers are. In fact, they're one of the worst teams in the NHL, somewhat by design other than Bedard. But this is exactly the way the Kraken should be able to play a game against a team like that. We saw them do it against the Sharks, but other than that, this is a type of matchup the Kraken have struggled with this season. In fact, they lost to the same Blackhawks team in Chicago during that 8-game losing streak. So, even if it's not a great opponent, it was good to see them handle and take care of business in the way that they should, following up that, again, sigh of relief, really weight off the shoulders win against the Panthers. So in some ways, it was almost as much of a sigh of relief to see them put together this second full 60-minute effort as it was to see them win that first game in a long time against the Panthers. Now, I will point out that the last time the Kraken handled a bad team at home like this and beat them 7-1, that being the game against the Sharks, obviously, they then went on to lose the next 8 games in a row, which I pretty much only point out as a way to try to jinx that from not happening again. Honestly, though, and hopefully I'm not tempting fate by saying this, I definitely don't expect another 8-game losing streak for a number of reasons. One, they just don't happen that often, not even to teams that are really, really intentionally bad and trying to tank, which the Kraken aren't even with the rough start to the season. Plus, they do also have the Ducks coming up, and they are a team that is a little bit more in that category in a few games. And even if they do lose their next 3, which is very possible, with 2 of them being against one of the best teams in the NHL in the LA Kings, and the middle game being against another very good team in the Stars, the Kraken played this game a lot better than they played that game against the Sharks. That game against the Sharks, they won 7-1, mostly because the Sharks looked like, I mean, they just didn't look like an NHL team out there. It looked like an AHL team playing against an NHL team. The Kraken just had all the time and space they could have possibly wanted in that game, just skated around the Sharks, and they were pretty sloppy at times, a bit careless with the puck because they knew they could be without really suffering any consequences, and sure enough, they did get away with it in that game. But it almost seemed like they continued to do that as they went on into the next few games, playing that sloppy hockey, expecting it to just work out for them, because it did against the Sharks, and then because they're actually playing against NHL teams, it didn't work, and it in fact came back to bite them on a number of occasions throughout the next 8 games. In this game against the Blackhawks, though, they were a lot better about not playing that sloppy style and just careless with the puck, even when they got the large lead towards the end of the second period and throughout the entire third. Especially the back half of the second period and really the entire third period, they played pretty well, and although they might have let off the gas a little bit at times because, well, they could because of the scoreboard, they weren't playing the careless, sloppy hockey, just throwing the puck around because they knew they couldn't lose the game at that point. They were being at least responsible with it in transition and not getting into the bad habits that could come back to bite them, especially if they were to try the same thing against the Kings coming up on Saturday. Obviously, whether or not they continue to play this way against the Kings or fall back into some of those undisciplined mistakes that they've been making for a lot of their losses so far this season, we'll just have to wait and see on Saturday. For what it's worth, the Kings are pretty good at forcing teams into making those undisciplined mistakes, especially in transition. This is the best team at 5-on-5 in the NHL that's coming in on Saturday, and then the Kraken will go to see a few days later in LA. So Yeah, we'll have to see how things go there, but it is at least promising that they've now played 2 games with very little as far as obvious poor play is concerned. Though I suppose with that being said, this game against the Blackhawks wasn't necessarily fully perfect from end to end. There were a couple of periods here and there of a minute or two where the Kraken did play a little bit more sloppy style of hockey, especially in the middle of the first period and the start of the second. Fortunately, most of that happened in the neutral zone, and the Kraken were able to recover from it pretty well and set up to recover from it. It was the type of mistake, though, against a team like the Kings, could still end up costing them back the other way, but against the Blackhawks, unless it was Bedard, which he only really had one good scoring chance, the Kraken did a pretty good job of containing Bedard. The Blackhawks, other than him, are not super likely to make you pay, or at least not as likely as a lot of other teams. Anyway, I suppose we might as well jump right into the game, where the Kraken have the same lineup that they've had for the last couple of games, and the Blackhawks, well, I don't know what their lineup looks like game to game, but it is the return of Ryan Donato to Climate Pledge Arena. He did get a little bit of a tribute from the team midway through the first period, gave a nice little wave, but didn't want to acknowledge it too much because, a hockey player can't show too much emotion. Anyway, it was good to see Donato back, and he did get one breakaway chance in the third period, set loose by Connor Bedard, and Donato, we know, can score on these type of breakaways. We saw him do it with the Kraken for a couple of seasons, but fortunately he didn't score against the Kraken in this one. And with it being Donato's return, I suppose that in some ways it was kind of fitting that it was the fourth line, with Donato finishing his time, at least with the Kraken, on the fourth line. Throughout his time with the Kraken, obviously he went up and down the lineup throughout the 2 years he was here, but finished the time throughout the end of last year and playoffs on that fourth line with Geeky and Sprong, who also left in the offseason. That in this game, it was the fourth line for the Kraken that got them off and running in the first period, as it didn't take too long into the game, just a couple minutes in, when Yamamoto picks up a turnover by the Blackhawks just outside the Blackhawks end of the ice in the neutral zone. He just whips around 180 back into the offensive end with the puck, skates up to the faceoff circle, and fires off a shot over the blocker, or maybe just under the blocker, right around the blocker of Soderblom and into the far side of the net to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead, and for Yamamoto, his 5th of the season and 2nd in as many games, as it was the fourth line that got the Kraken really running in that game against the Panthers as well. And as the goal goes in, Soderblom takes a second to check his pad for holes, which there weren't any, he just missed the puck, and Yamamoto skates over to the side, celebrates with his teammates, and we get another one of these good mouth guard out, kind of Matthew Tkachuk style moments from Yamamoto. This done a little bit more reserved than one we saw last night, but still celebrating another goal as he started to heat up here of late. Now, following this Yamamoto goal, like I mentioned, the middle part of this first period was a little bit hit or miss for the Kraken as far as actually playing clean, disciplined hockey. There were some points here and there where they had a little bit of a tendency to just kind of throw the puck around carelessly, make careless passes or errant passes, and turn the puck over in the neutral zone. But fortunately, the Blackhawks weren't really able to turn that into any particularly great scoring chances. They did get into the offensive end and get some shots off on Decord, but most of that came from the outside, as they were at least able to recover and get back to play solid defense, not allowing any rushes off of those chances. But thankfully, as we get later and later into the first period, the Kraken start to shore things up, play a little bit cleaner hockey, get set up in the offensive end, and eventually it's the fourth line once again, creating a little chaos, or at least getting net front in front of Chicago's net. Dunn fires off a shot from up by the corner by the blue line, which does glance off a Chicago defenseman. Not a ton, so I don't know why Soderblom's looking in the complete opposite direction of where the shot came from or where the puck ended up, but it lands right in front of, or between and in front of, Belmar and Yamamoto. Both of them whack at the puck with the empty net yawning in front of them. It goes into the net, eventually given to Yamamoto, but originally it was Belmar that got the goal. Either way, the Kraken are up 2-0 heading into the intermission. Like I said, during intermission, they do change it from being Belmar's goal to Yamamoto's 6th of the season, and that does mean now for the rest of the game that we are on Yamamoto hat trick watch. Actually, for that matter, as we start the second period, we're on natural hat trick watch for Yamamoto, which would have been the first natural hat trick in Seattle Kraken history. A natural hat trick just being a hat trick where all 3 goals are scored in succession without anybody else scoring in between them. So Yamamoto, if he'd scored 3 straight goals, natural hat trick, but unfortunately Yamamoto's bid for that natural hat trick is broken up when, like I said, the Kraken play a little bit sloppy here again to start the second period for a couple minutes, and it's the one sloppy play that happens in their end of the ice that ends up costing them, as Alexiak just kind of carelessly tries to clear the puck, but throws it right up to the blue line to a Chicago Blackhawk, who skates it in, passes it down to Radish by the net. Radish fires off the shot and just barely squeaks it under the glove of Decord, breaking up what would have been a second straight shutout bid for Decord, the first goal that he'd given up in 4+ periods of play. I will say for the Kraken though, and Alexiak in particular on this one, is this goal is really on him. Not only does he turn over the puck, but then he goes to the guy that he threw the puck to and abandons Radish, who's then left wide open to get the pass and score the goal. So kind of a double-edged mistake for Alexiak that leads to this goal. The Kraken, though, use this mistake that ends up in their net, and it's obviously not ideal that it did cost them a goal and bring the Blackhawks back to within one, but they do use this as a wake-up call and really play fantastic hockey throughout the rest of this game, almost mistake-free. They do allow the 2 more decent chances. Donato gets that breakaway, and Bedard also gets a chance in tight, which that is one of the last guys in the NHL, even if he is 18, that you want to have that type of open chance in close towards the net. Fortunately, he fired that shot high, so the Blackhawks don't score again. Decord also comes up with 2 saves on the Donato breakaway. The Kraken, for the rest of this game, really dominate play. And that turnaround for the Kraken starts right away off the faceoff as they get back into the offensive end. And although it almost gets cleared, Evans is able to get his skate along the board, preventing the puck from crossing the blue line, keeping the Kraken onside and in that offensive end of the ice, eventually winning that puck battle, getting it to Bjorkstrand, who skates around with it for a while. I think he lost it off his stick at one point. Either way, he circles up towards the net, then fires off a pass to the far side across the crease to Gord, who's wide open for what would be an easy goal, but the pass never gets through because it goes off the skate of Dickinson and into the top corner of the net to give Bjorkstrand the goal and the Kraken the 3-1 lead and the quick response to that one lone goal for the Blackhawks. Now, yes, there's no way around the fact that the Kraken do get pretty fortunate here with the very lucky bounce off the skate of Dickinson into the net. But like I said, Gord was on the other side of the crease waiting for that pass, and if it doesn't go off the skate of Dickinson, it probably still ends up in the back of the net with the Gord shot. So it's a lucky bounce, and it's definitely the type of bounce the Kraken haven't seen very much of this season, and you'll take those, but they were at least set up to score here, even if it wasn't for that turn of fortune. And shoot, even if the Kraken hadn't scored here, say Gord misses the shot or it gets saved or blocked, the Kraken hold the offensive end for almost the entire rest of this second period. And even if it does end up taking the Kraken a while to end up scoring again with all of that pressure that they have throughout the second period, including a Beniers breakaway, which he isn't able to sneak through the fivefold, just snake-bitten offensively. I actually think he's been playing all right. It just doesn't look great with the lack of offensive production. Either way, eventually the Kraken do end up finding the back of the net for a 4th time as we get into the final few minutes of this second period. It's Tanev who circles around behind the Chicago net, eventually getting the puck up to Borgen on the blue line, and I mean right on the blue line. Borgen barely keeps this one onside as he shovels the puck off of the blue line, just flings it at the net, and Cartier with the beautiful hands-eye tip in front of it to get it past Soderblom, nothing he can do, into the far side of the net, giving the Kraken that 4-1 lead and Cartier his 6th of the season. And then a couple minutes later, it's the third line once again, although this time the entirety of the third line and not just Bjorkstrand. Bjorkstrand is the one that starts with the puck here and sets off a clean, crisp, tic-tac-toe passing play in the offensive end. Bjorkstrand up along the boards, fires off a pass through the high slot to the other side for Gord. Then Gord and Tolvanen just kind of crisscross through the middle of the ice, swapping sides. Gord passing it right back to the other side, across the crease and the face of Soderblom to a wide open Tolvanen on the back door. It gets through the defense and Tolvanen buries it to give the Kraken their 5th of the game, the 5-1 lead, and one of the prettiest goals of the season for the team. And for Tolvanen, it's his 8th of the season as he started to slowly heat up here a little bit. He's not scoring a goal a game like a couple of those guys on the 4th line are, but he's definitely been picking them up with a little bit more consistency here over this last little stretch, which is definitely nice to see. He's been playing great in the defensive end, but the offensive end is really where his mark has been made with his time with the Kraken, or in his time with the Kraken. It's good to see that coming back a bit. That goal from Tolvanen was where the onslaught would end for the Kraken in the second period, but they pick up right where they left off as we start the third. They end up getting a power play here early on the third, the first power play either way for either team in this game in the third period. And although the first unit isn't able to score, they do get some chances and are really trying to feed Yamamoto that third goal so he can get the hat trick. It doesn't happen. The second unit comes out, and eventually it's just Jared McCann doing Jared McCann things on the power play. Evans passes it down to McCann. He skates up to the high part of the faceoff circle, winds up, fires off an absolute laser of a shot that goes right through the 5-hole of Soderblom into the back of the net, off his stick, and then right into the back of the net before you can even blink. The Kraken have a 6-1 lead. For McCann, it's his 14th of the season. Evans gets his second primary assist of the game, so his first multi-point game in the NHL, and now 3 points in the last 2 games for Evans. Still looking for that first goal, but the way he's been playing, that's gonna come here sooner rather than later. And for the Kraken, they aren't done yet, as they pick up the extra point just 21 seconds later, right back into the offensive end, and right back to the fourth line, finishing the scoring the way they started it. It's Devon Shore just picking a puck up off the boards behind the net, throwing it up to Bellemare, and I don't know how Bellemare snuck this puck in. Soderblom has his skate against the post. I don't know what Bellemare bounced it off of, but somehow it ends up behind Soderblom into the net. 7th goal for the Kraken. That would do it for Soderblom. He exits. Mrazek comes in and saves all 6 of the remaining shots the Kraken get in this third period, including another power play where Yamamoto gets one more chance, and actually I think he had his last shot on goal at 5-on-5 later on in the third. He doesn't end up getting his hat trick. The Kraken do have one penalty kill that they kill off successfully, and we get to that final score of 7-1 as the Kraken just kind of ice away the remainder of this game once it gets later on, and don't try too hard to run up the score. They did get a few more shots, like I said, but yeah, they're pretty happy with just taking these 2 points and moving on after 2 very solid games in a row. So once again for the Kraken, a second fantastic win in a row. For the first time this season, like I said in the beginning, really their first back-to-back full 60-minute efforts. And yeah, there's a minute or 2 here and there that you might like a little bit of improvement on, but for the most part, the Kraken really controlled play throughout this entire game. Certainly controlled things on the scoreboard throughout the entire game. And obviously it would be nice if they could get their first 3-game winning streak with a win against the Kings coming up here on Saturday. That would be a pretty impressive win, as the Kings, like I said, are one of the best teams in the NHL by advanced stats, the best team in the NHL at 5-on-5. So it's going to be a tough test for the Kraken, even if the Kings have lost, I think, 2 now in a row, is a team that's going to want to get things back going in the right direction for themselves. So yeah, tough opponent coming in. The Kraken can't just get soft and feel like every game is going to be like this one for the Blackhawks, but in that way, like I said, they did play a much more clean, crisp game, especially from early on after that goal went in for the Blackhawks throughout the rest of it, than they did even in that 7-1 game against the Sharks earlier on. Even with all that being said, though, I don't know actually which was best for the Kraken, this game or the shirts that Bjorkstrand and Yamamoto were wearing during post-game. Bjorkstrand wasn't giving away any kind of clues or hints as to where he thought they came from. He just said it showed up in his locker, so he felt like he would wear it. Yamamoto did say that he wasn't sure, but he thought Maddie might have had something to do with it. Either way, obviously some of the best shirts. I mean, shoot, if the Kraken sold these in the team store, they would fly off the rack faster than maybe even the Winter Classic jerseys. That might be a bit of a stretch, but yeah, they'd go pretty quick. With that being said, though, I am going to start to wrap things up here since it is starting to get pretty late. Well, actually early at this point. It took me a while to get back from the game, so I started recording late, and I will still have to wake up in the morning. So we're going to close things out here with Kraken 3 stars. As always, these are brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to be a part of helping decide Kraken 3 stars, you can help support the channel a little bit more than you already are by watching the video to this point, by going to the link down below to Patreon and helping support there as well. And with those 3 stars, happily, just like the game before it against the Panthers, we do have the problem of having way too many guys to choose from when it comes to these 3 stars. It's a good problem to have. And with the first star, I'm definitely going with Kailer Yamamoto. He's the only multi-goal scorer for the Kraken in this game. Bellemare could have been had he gotten actual credit for that goal that Yamamoto ends up getting credit for. Yamamoto's stick just that little bit quicker to that puck to knock in that second goal. Bellemare still gets, for him, the first time he's had goals in back-to-back games, and I think it was 4 seasons. So yeah, pretty good little stretch there for Bellemare. Either way, Yamamoto, the 2 goals, and even outside of that, had a fantastic game. He did have chances at the hat trick throughout it. That fourth line in general, really looking like the fourth line for the second game in a row that we got used to seeing last season. Obviously, a full different cast of characters on that fourth line, but it's kind of the first time this season that we've seen a fourth line really roll well for the Kraken. And then with the second star, I'm once again going with Riker Evans here. I think for the third time now that I've had him in 3 stars in the 5 games he's played for the Kraken. It's been that good of a start to his NHL career. It's his first multi-point game, like I said, and he was far from the only Kraken player that had multiple points in this game. But even outside of the points that he gets on the scoreboard, he was fantastic for this team. Once again, full 200 feet. As a defenseman, that's particularly important, but he's been fantastic for the Kraken. Very responsible on the back check, and obviously great with the puck when he has it coming back the other way. Very effective at breaking out for the Kraken, and good in the offensive end on top of it. And it's not just my opinion, the advanced stats absolutely back that up. When it comes to the Dom Lucian model of advanced stats, which is the one that I tend to prefer among the variety of different advanced stats models out there, and we can get into that in a separate video. But according to Dom's model as presented by Hockey Stat Cards, Evans has, I already mentioned this in the previous video, been the top Kraken player in now 3 games that he's played. And not only was he the top player once again in this game, the 3rd time, he was the top player in the entire NHL when it came to those advanced stats. So it was a very good night for Evans, even if he doesn't have as many points as, say, a Bjorkstrand, who would have been my 3rd star if it wasn't for the fact that Joey Decord was the one most mentioned on Patreon by the time I'm filming this. And Decord, while he didn't have to be fantastic for the Kraken in this one since they did score 7 times, he was once again incredible for the Kraken in net. He does allow the one barely to sneak past him from that tight angle off of the Alexiak turnover and then abandonment of the guy who ends up shooting the puck. Either way, he still makes 21 saves on 22 shots and follows up that first shutout performance with another very strong one here against the Blackhawks. So Bjorkstrand will have to get an honorable mention. Belmar, for that matter, is also very worth an honorable mention, and a number of other Kraken players. Again, plenty of guys to choose from, but the 3 guys that I will go for the stars, obviously Yamamoto, Cartier could be another honorable mention, but Yamamoto, Evans, and then Decord for the 3 stars. Let me know what you think, though, down in the comment section below. If you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, the buttons for that kind of stuff down below help support the channel. Like and subscribe. Until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!